Welcome, everybody. We're here for the August board meeting. We have a lot of very interesting things to cover today, a lot of reports on research and other topics. And so let's get right to it. And let me turn it over to John to talk about meetings and minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I distributed last week minutes from an executive session on the April 24th, as well as our last light board meeting on July 10th. And I didn't get any comments, so if there aren't any proposed edits to these minutes and seeing no hands being raised, I move that the light board approve the minutes as drafted for the executive session on April 24th and the light board meeting on July 10th.
I'll second.
And the executive session to not be released, but approved.
And Alice.
Yes.
Bianca.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So we have covered that exciting topic. Thank you for your work on that, John. And let's go to the director's report.
Great, thank you. Just as a note, different kind of format today, I'm going to take a break halfway through the director's report because I'm going to cover a lot of topics, and I know that sometimes it's difficult to track those. So number one, if you do have a question for something, immediately feel free to raise your hand or just let me know and I can stop. But I will take a break. I have a note to kind of stop halfway through because we're going to cover a lot of topics. I wanted to mention that as it pertains to staffing, we have identified a finalist for our customer service representative position. And yesterday, the person cleared all the pre-employment steps and hurdles. So we've got a start date of Monday, August 26th. So that's great. And retired just a little while ago. And it was great to have that recruitment move so quickly. So I thank everybody who was involved in it. I wanted to mention that the legislative session on Beacon Hill ended without any major new legislation that would pertain to light plants or clean energy or economic development. And I think a lot of people were a little disappointed that they didn't get more done, but they've talked about a special session. And so we're tracking that. We have lobbyists and people who give us information from what's going on Beacon Hill, just so that we're plugged into those bills. And I know that there was a proposed amendment to Chapter 164 that got a lot of scrutiny and some other things that would have helped MLPs with mutual aid and things. So we're optimistic that maybe those will come up for discussion soon. I wanted to mention that you'll see in the report that the Cambridge Housing Authority has secured a $1.3 million grant to purchase and install heat pumps in the Ever Gardens complex. So that's exciting. That's going to be a pretty big project. And I also wanted to plug the upcoming EV showcase that's happening at Bradford Mill. It's on September 14th from 1 to 4. I'll mention this at our next meeting, but it's going to be a fantastic opportunity for people in the public who are interested in EVs to try out a variety of them, sit in them, and learn from EV owners about their benefits. So that's great. Thank you, Jan and her team, for all the work on that. I wanted to mention the Vineyard Wind project. There was a single blade failure on the project that's halted all clean wind production over there at Vineyard Wind. It was supplying enough power for 400,000 homes in Massachusetts. So this is a pretty big project, and it was expected to grow. GE Verona and the Vineyard Wind project are committed to trying to get these units inspected and back online as soon as possible and make sure that they understand what caused the failure to prevent it in the future. But without projects like this, the state probably isn't going to make its clean energy goals in the future. So it's important that they understand what happened and fix that and get it going soon. I wanted to give a couple updates on the landfill and the battery storage projects. So first, we're working with E&E to prepare the information that we need to determine the level of study required for these projects. In the past, not all of our projects were getting ISO and FERC scrutiny, and we realized that there's some projects that needed to go through that process. So we're going through getting an inventory done of everything that we've done and everything that we want to do so that we can kind of wrap them up in one swoop instead of have to do them in a serial fashion. So we have a meeting scheduled for, I believe, next week on that, and we'll be meeting with regulators to kind of go over that. Some of the rules are changing soon, so if we can get in under those before those rule changes take effect, it will greatly expedite the process. So we're trying to get that done soon. Next, we are in discussions with Kearsarge about expanding the solar at the landfill. It could end up being just over 4 megawatts. So with the project of that size, even though it's on bus one, we still anticipate needing a battery there to prevent the full 4 megawatts coming online at the same time. So we're working with them. They've been so far pretty good partners in understanding what our needs are and trying to craft a unique solution that would kind of help us and help them. So right now we're probably looking at engaging a third party, somebody like PLM, to understand how much power those conductors can take, and then also look at the load situations around there to see if it's possible to use that for peak shaving, because they would want to inject a significant amount of power for that. So we just want to understand before we get into the nitty gritty exactly what that can take. And then we're actually going to look to do a similar thing at the W.R. Gray site, just to have that identified as a potential site for the large energy storage project. And all of these projects actually tie into each other because they're going to affect the power and load demand on the local distribution network. So I thank Joe and his team for all the time they've spent looking into these different options and understanding what the impacts would be. I think I'll pause right there and just see on any of those topics, are there any questions from the board? No. Okay, I'll keep going.
Thank you.
So I wanted to give update on the middle school project. So we're finalizing the RFP, and where we are on that is that we needed some additional specifications from SDA to drop into the RFP. We've got the elective pay information from Baker Tilly, which will help us maximize the Inflation Reduction Act credits. We've got some of the legal language from council that needs to be in there. Now we need the specifications. There was a suggestion by SDA to move to a medium voltage option, which would eliminate the need for a switchboard. And switchboard is probably our longest future shipping object that would be required for some of the solar components. And so Joe and his team are looking at that, and then we'll get back to SDA. And if this works, then we might be able to simplify and cut out some cost of the project and also speed it up. So that's a potential, but we want to make sure that we're thinking for the future and making sure that this doesn't eliminate any options that we need. And then once we get that from SDA, we'll drop it in, and then council will do one quick review. I will still send it to the board for review before we go out to bid, because I know that people were interested in seeing it and then providing feedback on it. And I'm happy to meet with people individually. If the timing works that it's done very soon and we don't want to wait for the next board meeting, I'm happy to meet with people individually just to collect comments on it and make sure that we incorporate those. Or if it's closer to the next meeting, we can wait and I can circulate it with the board packet, and then we can have a discussion about it then. But we did get the conduit, or the conduit is being installed, and there was a picture in the packet that shows those lines being run, which is exciting. And I believe the vault has been installed. So things are, we don't call it a vault, manhole system has been installed. So some good progress there at the site. For advanced metering, we crossed the 6,000 meter mark, which is really exciting. That's about 87% of all the residential meters installed. We had a nice lunch or fruit and dessert for the folks working on that. And we're on target to finish in October, if not a few days sooner than that at the current pace. And then we'll shift over to commercial meters. And Marty's been doing a great job with the load control relays for the ETS units and the other loads that we can control. The SCADA proposal's been accepted by the engineering team and is now being kind of tweaked by legal counsel. So we've gotten some feedback from them, and we're passing that off to SEL for review, but we feel like we're very close, which is exciting. Once the estimates were sooner than expected for the whole project, but still probably in line with what we were expecting for completion by the end of next year. But once we get the project moving, we'll have a better idea of the timeline on that. We took place in a demonstration of SEL's microgrid controller, which was really impressive. This product is really focused kind of on a larger scale. Some of the other microgrid controllers we looked at would be perfect for a single site that would effectively balance the solar, the battery, the building demand, and maybe some other inputs like a generator. This one really can do that on a much larger scale across the town. So if we have multiple distributed energy resources on the grid, and we have to shuffle, various inputs like demand and time of day, and this would really do a good job at that, and it would be in communication with our power protection devices around town. So it could be kind of a unified system. It looked really, really promising. So more to come on that. The chargers at the Rideout were taken offline about a week and a half ago, I think, to complete some of the accessibility requirements that were in the grant. So after we finish this last paving piece, and we have some signs in stock that we're just going to put up, we should be good to get the final grant award. I've been in touch with the person from the state who's administering this, and everything looks like it's going to work out well. So we should be getting the full $100,000 grant rebate for that. And those units should be online soon. We are putting information out on social media and news and notices. And also, once we update the kind of the plug shares and the charge points and the flows and all those apps, then people are aware that something is online or offline. I mentioned this to the board, but I'm happy to say we've been working on a market adjustment for some light plant roles, and we'll be reviewing that plan with the personnel board this evening at their meeting. And I'll keep staff and the board updated on that progress, and hopefully everything goes well tonight. And then once we get a timeline, we'll communicate that out to everybody so that we know when this is going to take effect. As a follow-up to a suggestion at the last meeting, Carol has prepared a flyer for the charging stations in Concord that we can distribute to hotels or other locations. I'll make sure that we get those at some of the town buildings where a lot of people from the public frequent, like the library, the Council on Aging, the townhouse, visitor center. And then I know, Brian, you'd offered to kind of bring those around to maybe some regional hotels, so we can definitely get those to you. We're going to get them printed, so I'll keep you posted on that. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the recruitment of the permanent director position. So the town manager, I believe, has included the light board in her most recent communication out, confirming that candidates have been screened and there'll be first round interviews sometime before the end of the month. And then she'd like to have the board to meet in open session to meet the finalists, which I guess are anticipated to be 3. And then, feel free to coordinate Warren with Carrie or her staff on the timing of all that. And you're welcome to reach out to Karen to help coordinate or get things posted for that meeting. And that's all I had for the director's update.
Hey, thanks. It's been a busy time, a lot going on. Any questions for Jason? I had one. The Rideout chargers, you said they went offline. Are they back online?
Joe, do you know? I don't believe so. We're waiting for some paving, I think.
Yes, that's correct. Once we have the paving lined up, once they come in and they do the final, the grade adjustments, so we meet all our ADA compliance, we'll put the stations back out.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
So the SEL controls, will they work with the Yukon Eaton system very well?
Yep.
Okay, so and you like them as a good way for sites to control, as well as for the utility to have kind of global control over multiple installations.
Yeah, that seems to be their strong suit, because we have SEL power protection relays and other equipment installed, and they may be the provider for our SCADA system. So they would have visibility into everything. So if we have a problem in one side of town with a DER, it could actually modify something on another side of town really well. And it does use multi-speak and talk to Yukon and get real-time information from the meters. So it's a very mature product used by other utilities on a much larger scale than Concord.
Great. One other question. The middle school design going to a different voltage, how impactful is that to the scope of the project? I mean, that that's basically different equipment for all of the interconnection.
Joe, do you want to answer that question? I'm not 100% sure we're going to that. It's just a proposal, but
Yep, no, essentially, the plan right now is to have a low voltage switchgear. We would call low voltage is 480 volts. But that allows us to bring everything into one central location and be able to control it. What's nice about that is that if we have an issue with one particular item, say, the roof array, we can isolate that and still keep the canopy array on and the battery on, or we have that versatility. If we go to the medium voltage system, which actually means we're going to bump that up to distribution voltages that we have throughout the town. If we have any issues, it's almost like a full shutdown. So we'd have to shut the school. There are a lot of things would have to make happen. So we lose a little bit of that versatility. The other issue is that all of our infrastructure is already in place. So, all the conduits go from the street all the way in. Everything's been put in. It's all been backfilled with concrete. So we're trying to look and see if there are any options. The other piece is that even just looking at the amount of land that's available just in that utility corridor, it's a lot smaller than it looks on the plans when you're actually out there and you can see where things actually ended up. So we're trying to look at all that, but the biggest thing is probably the versatility for down the road. We're looking at the multi-year. How will this help or hurt us in the long run?
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Alice.
I just want to thank Jason for staying on top of the personnel study that will lead to a different pay scale. This has been on the agenda for many years, and I really appreciate you getting this across to the finish line the way that you have. We have had experienced a lot of difficulty over the years in attracting and hiring the type of personnel that we wanted, and a lot of it was due to the fact that our rates, what we were paying, were considerably lower salaries than our competition around us. So I know it's been a lot of work and a lot of meetings, but I really appreciate the work because I think it will help us in the long run to attract and retain good employees. So thank you for that.
yeah.
Good
And I'll
point,
just-
Alice.
I just passed those thanks along to HR and the town manager who were very supportive of these conversations. So I thank them as well.
Great.
Agreed.
So let's go on to broadband.
Just a couple updates for broadband. I'm pleased to announce that we've hired a second senior network engineer. That person's going to start on September 4th. His name is On. We're really excited to get to some of the projects that have not been moving as quickly as we'd hoped, but I have to say Dale's done a terrific job kind of filling in that capacity and picking up the slack, as we've only had one person for quite a while. But I'm really excited with the people we have. Our network engineer, Victor, who's been with us now for a couple of years, is just a fantastic employee and the type of person that people would be proud to have on their team. So I'm really excited about what this means for that group. We've got a very large network cutover scheduled for Saturday, September 7th. This is on the town's network. Remember, the broadband team does support the town network as well. And we don't anticipate this impacting Concord broadband in any way, but we will advertise the maintenance window during that time just to let people know that we're working on it. And I will say, I know that people have been following kind of how enmeshed the two networks are. This will be another step in really getting the management network separated for the two, because that's kind of the link right now, is that we have a management network that is a third network that allows us to connect to different devices, and this will help isolate that from the broadband and the town side. So that's good. We're continuing to work with the metering and customer service teams on the deployment of the IP link meters. These are meters that will actually allow us to connect to customer ONTs and get meter data into the Yukon system. And this means that if a gateway is down, or if we're concerned with saturation of meters in a particular area, it can have another path back to the server. So the teams have been doing great work on that. We had to actually spin up a new server to take in this data because it uses a different protocol than the rest of the meters. And they're really close to getting that deployed and online. So that's exciting. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention was there's a chart in this month's broadband update report that shows the longevity of customers. I just want to thank our customers who've been with us for such a long time. We've got people who crossed the 10-year threshold recently, and it's just great to see the loyalty to Concord Broadband, that when you offer competitive service and you have this local feel and excellent customer service that people really respond to that and appreciate it. So the team has been doing great with their customer service and outreach and just going the extra mile to make people happy. So I just am very grateful to be a part of something like Concord Broadband, and that's my report there.
Thank you. That is good to recognize the longevity of the customers, and in general, it seems like things are headed in a good direction there. Any questions for Jason about broadband? Good. We now have an extended agenda item. We put 30 minutes on the schedule for the customer satisfaction survey. The reason we're putting so much time into this is that there's a lot of rich, nuanced data that we've gotten from the survey. A lot of effort went into it, and it seems important for the board to understand what was learned and have an opportunity to ask questions and dig into some aspects of the survey. So, Jason.
Thank you. I'll just say a couple of things before I turn it over to Catherine from Great Blue. So it had been since 2017 since CMLP had done a formal survey. We were intending to do one in 2020. The pandemic hit, and then things got derailed for a little bit. It came up in conversation earlier this year after I had become the interim director, and I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to collect some information about where we were, and then also, get some ideas of things that we could do to improve during this period of transition with director position. So we went with Great Blue for our survey company, and they have a standard MEME survey, which is the Municipal Electric Association of Massachusetts, and that way you can benchmark yourself against other municipal light plants in the state, as well as other APPA folks around the country. So with that, I'll turn it over to Catherine Vollmer, and let me make sure sharing is enabled. Do you want to share, Catherine, or do you want me to share?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Great. Let me just allow that.
Thank you.
All right. You should be all set.
Yes, I can. All right. Oh, there we go. My Zoom must have done an update on me. Everything's in a different place now, but anyways, thank you all for having me today. I'm Catherine Vollmer. I'm one of the project managers at Great Blue, and really happy to share the results of this year's customer satisfaction survey with you. The good news is I have a lot of good news to share today, and very, very little bad news. So just briefly to touch on Great Blue and who we are, we do a lot of surveys very similar to this one. So we're the preferred partner of the American Public Power Association. So we do surveys just like this across the country with other municipal utilities. Specifically, we work with a lot of MEME utilities. So as mentioned before, we do have a MEME core survey instrument, which we base this survey off of. So we have a lot of those benchmarking capabilities. And just to dive into the overall purpose of the survey, this really was a holistic customer satisfaction survey. So we wanted to measure what the overall perceptions look like, customer service personnel, awareness of CMLP's ownership model. We have some communication questions about the value of different platforms and preferred methods of communication. We dive into self-service digital platforms a little bit more, outage restoration and response times, and then lastly, covering the symmetrical broadband service. And just to touch briefly on our research methodology snapshot, we used an entirely digital survey methodology this time around. All in all, we had over 1,000 customers complete the survey, which is awesome. Usually we aim for getting a minimum of 400 completed surveys because that will give you a margin of error below 5%. And in the world of survey research, that's what's deemed as being statistically reliable data. With so many completes, we actually had a margin of error below 3%. So our margin of error is plus or minus 2.7%, which means every time that, if we were going to conduct the same survey 100 more times, 95 times out of 100, the results would come back somewhere within plus or minus 2.7 percentage points of the results I'm going to share with you today, which means it's very reliable data, which we're excited about. And as far as our research dates, we fielded this over the course of about 5 to 6 weeks from early May to mid-June. That gave folks plenty of time to complete the survey. And our respondent snapshot, so just a little bit on the demographic profile of our respondents. As far as age breakdown, it does lean a little bit older, as you can see more folks in that kind of 55 or older category versus under 55. Number of household residents was pretty mixed. We had a lot of two-person households, which makes sense, but some very, single-person households, as well as 4 or more larger family households as well. Household income, we saw a lot, we saw a lot of people say prefer not to say, which always happens for the income question. About 30% of customers didn't provide an income, but of those who did, a lot of those folks were in the $200,000 or more range. So definitely more, higher household income households. Gender identity, relatively even split between males and females, slightly more male respondents compared to female. And then renters versus owners, we had about 9 out of 10 of the customers were homeowners compared to a little less than 10% were renters. And this page I'm going to just skip over, but this is just a guide to some of the footnotes that you'll see throughout the report, as mostly for your reading purposes. And I will skip over this page too. We like to say this is kind of your cheat sheet to the report. So if you only have a couple of minutes to look at it, I would recommend turning to this page because it'll give you everything you need. But we're just going to go and dive into things that are much more visually appealing. So to start is our organizational characteristics. And these are characteristics, we take them directly from the Mean Core survey. They're really used to get kind of a holistic view of what customer satisfaction looks like across a number of different key areas. So as you can see, we're measuring things like reliability, rates, communication, overall satisfaction, things like that. And what we've kind of highlighted in green here are really the highest ratings where you're really excelling. So reliable service, that's usually the top rated characteristic for every public power utility, but 97.4% is nearly perfect. So just wanted to point that out. Honesty and integrity, this is a really high rating when it comes to things like honesty and transparency of your services. A lot of customers across the country feel very wary about their utility company. They feel like they're not receiving enough information, that there's things going on behind the scenes that they don't know about. And so to see a 96% here is a really strong rating, especially when you look at the national average is below 60%. And then also overall satisfaction rating, just about or almost 95% overall satisfaction. Again, can't really ask for much better than that. Our overall average rating is a 90.7%, which is right in line with the Mean Core at 90%. So definitely in line with mean peers. And what we always see year after year is the Massachusetts municipal utilities always perform higher than the national average. Our national average being about a 64%. So as you can see, CMLP, just like the Mean Core, is excelling the national average in every single area on here. And next we have our NP plus S score. This is not to be confused with a Net Promoter Score. This is our own Great Blue metric. It's a net positive score. So we ask customers to describe what kind of relationship they have with their utility company. And we have, an advocate, a loyal customer, a satisfied customer, or less than satisfied. And really your NP plus S is the combination of these 3 green bars, which are essentially those who have a positive relationship with you. So 95.5% was the net positive score for CMLP, which is very high, in line with what we usually see for a lot of memes. But as you can see, the national NP plus S score is a 79.7%. So doing about 15 percentage points higher than the national average for the NP plus S score. And really the goal here is to try and convert as many people from being satisfied customers to advocates and loyal customers. Your satisfied customer is really your, hey, the power is on, my rates are fine, no big complaints. But these we tend to find are your less engaged customers, whereas your loyal and advocate customers are the ones that are, actively promoting you in the community. They're, enrolling in all of the different programs and services that you have. They're, actively participating in any events that you're holding. So, really the goal is to have more folks that are kind of in these loyal and advocates. They're much less likely to become dissatisfied at any point versus a satisfied customer could become dissatisfied if they have, an extended power outage or a rate hike or something like that. So this is, really strong ratings here. And honestly, to see this many people being loyal or advocates is also a very high frequency as well. That's over half of the customers who took the survey.
Hey, Catherine, before you go on from that, you compare our score on that to the national average. How do we compare to the mean peers?
Yeah, so the meme average, I believe, is about a 93%. I don't have it on here, but usually the memes score somewhere in that 90 to 95% range for NP+S. I've seen a couple that score a little bit higher, around like a 97%, but definitely right in the ballpark compared to other memes.
Thank you.
And Catherine, when you say the national average, are you referring to public power entities
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, anywhere in here where we say national average, it's only public power, and it all comes from the public power data source. So it's all just from public power customers across the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Thank
getting
you. Sorry.
to
Thank you, Jason. That was a good clarification. I was assuming it was all US utilities, not just publicly owned.
yeah, the number would shoot down pretty quickly if we
Yeah.
use that one. We've tried doing that before, and it's just not even worth comparing. So anyways, our customer service related questions. So these questions are asked to people who have had a recent interaction with CMLP, and by recent we mean within the last year. And so of those, what we found is that about 40% have not had a call or visit. So of the 60% who have had a recent interaction, most folks are calling or they're having a field representative visit their home. And the reasons for contact were largely any kind of an outage issue, meter change replacement or new meter. I know that you guys are going through a lot of meter, new AMI installations. So that's a lot of what these, reasons for contact are, or just simply installing service, those who are, newer customers. And then satisfaction with the customer service experience is very high as well. Over 9 out of 10 of those customers who have had a recent interaction were satisfied with the interaction they had with the representative, 91.4%. On a national average level, again, just public power utilities, that number is 77.4%. So again, performing above the national average here in multiple areas, as well as the frequency of contact resolution. We ask about, when you contact your utility, are things typically taken care of the first time, or do you need to have repeated contact with them? And about 3/4 said that CMLP usually takes care of things the first time, which is actually a really high rate of first contact resolution. Nationally, as you can see, the number is 59.7%. We usually see this number being somewhere around 60% in a lot of our survey research. So, and even then, that's still the majority of customers, but you're always going to have some customers who are, whatever their reason for contact is, really does warrant a follow-up, whether they're, filling out forms and they need some extra paperwork or something. It really depends on what the issue is. So, having 3/4 that say their issues taken care of the first time is awesome. And this question has a big bearing on overall satisfaction as well. Satisfaction, not just with the customer service representatives, but satisfaction with the utility as a whole. We oftentimes find that the more times that a customer needs to contact their utility, the worse their overall perception becomes of the utility, because they just become frustrated with how long the interaction is taking and how prolonged it is, and just needing to find, a resolution to their issues. So this is a really important question here, but Concord is definitely performing above the national averages, and really right in line with what we see for other meme utilities as well. So,
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to give a quick shout out to Carol for that score, because I know she does a lot of work to make sure customer service works well, and it shows.
Pays off, yep. So getting into some communication questions, this question is asking how often your expectations are met when it comes to your interactions with CMLP. So this kind of gets into customer service as well. What we're seeing is almost 9 out of 10 said their expectations are met all of the time or most of the time. And less than 5% said that their expectations are met either some of the time or never. So really, again, a testament to all of the customer service work, making sure that the interactions that customers are having are really up to par and really meeting and also exceeding expectations in many areas. And then this is, again, some communication, but when it comes to outage response times, we ask about, the communication that you receive during outages. And again, if it meets your expectations all of the time, most of the time, some of the time, or never. So in total, a little over 2/3, 67.9%, said their expectations are met all or most of the time. This definitely looks like a lower number, but we've done a lot of research on this kind of like outage response time in the past year, because there's been a lot of power outages, and we wanted to look into kind of what does the utilities response look like. And really, when we're looking at a national level, usually the results are somewhere in this kind of 60 to 70 percentage point range. So I don't think I've seen any utilities scoring above 70% in this category. So it's still, the 67.9% is actually top end. And when you think about it, there's a lot of customers who may either have not had a recent outage, so they don't remember, whatever the last time that they had an outage was, what that communication looked like. So a lot of this is just kind of a testament also to having limited power outages, is that people don't really remember what that experience was. And usually if people don't remember their experience, it means it wasn't that bad and they forgot about it. So nothing to be overly concerned here. The storm response time is really high. Over 4/5 said that their expectations are met all or most of the time for the outage response time, which is, again, very common for public power utilities to have a really high rating in this area. Once again, if we brought in the IOUs, this number would probably be like 60, 50%, because usually the outage response is a lot worse. So positive ratings here for overall outage response as well. Really high ratings here when it comes to awareness of your community ownership model. I will tell you, even with the memes, I very rarely see 95.4% of customers being aware that you're a community-owned utility. That's just a testament to all of the communication you all have done over the past couple of years and decades of communicating, what a community ownership model is, how you embody that every day in all of your practices. To see, the vast majority being aware of this is really positive. And this is another question that usually has a significant bearing on overall satisfaction ratings too, because a lot of times when customers know that their utility is community owned and what that ownership model means, they start to see the benefits of that, which is going to be on the next slide. And really the benefits, when you think about things like lower rates, better customer service, greater reliability, these are all things that, if you know that you're receiving that as a customer, obviously it's going to improve your perception of the utility too. So definitely, we always like to see this number being this high. On a national average, this number is scarily low. It's about 45% right now, customers. And I am always shocked when I put together those numbers, but that's the truth. It's been going down a lot in the past couple of years. It's something I preach every time I do these presentations, how important it is to make sure your customers know who you are and what you're doing and all of the wonderful work that you do, because there's so many utilities like yours across the country that aren't doing that. And as a result, their satisfaction ratings just aren't as high. And as you can see, this is really important to customers too. 93.7% said it's important that their utility is community owned. Specifically, over 3/4 said it's very important. So you can see that this is something that customers are not only aware of and familiar with, but they really do find it very important, and they find it to be really a testament to the quality of service that they're receiving as well. And as we see here on this page, this is really just asking customers, about the benefits of public power. This was a select all that apply question. So it's just asking folks to indicate the benefits that they associate with public power. So obviously we see a lot of high percentages here, but really it's the local control and governance. The better customer service is something people really do recognize, as we saw a couple slides ago, and then the increased reliability of service. So the good news is not only are customers aware that you're community owned, but they really do see all of these benefits coming through in all of the work that you do. And now a couple more awareness questions. This is a question where we ask how the extent to which customers agree with this statement: CMLP effectively balances environmental stewardship with fiscal responsibility. Overall, almost 9 out of 10 agree that, CMLP is living up to its mission in this area. And really, when you look at the things customers would change, there's only 25 customers who gave any kind of poor ratings here. Some folks said that they want less emphasis on green energy, which I don't think will be happening. But lower costs and affordable rates, people, every time we do surveys, they tend to throw that in for any open-ended question. They're like, just lower my rates, even though it has nothing to do with the questions. So we get a lot of those responses too. Back to some communication questions on the specific channels of communication. This is really similar to what we see with a lot of other meme utilities, but when you're looking at the value of different communication methods, really email and the website are the highest rated communication platforms among customers, followed by digital bill inserts and newsletters. So definitely seeing that the digital communication is, folks are finding that increasingly more valuable over the years compared to things like direct mail or printed bill inserts. What we did see was a lot of people who were unsure of the value of social media and text messages, which really, suggests that a lot of folks aren't necessarily enrolled in text messages, or they're not, following you on social media, so they don't know how valuable it is. And preferred communication methods, this is looking at, the specific information that folks want to be receiving. Really, it's outages and restoration updates, which we'll get into a little bit later, as well as specific rate information. And now the preferred source of information, again, we usually see this with every utility survey. People just say that they want to go to the website for information, which makes sense. Over 7 out of 10 want to use the website. We do have some folks who prefer more traditional methods, so things like bill inserts and newsletters and brochures. Again, what this really says is that while there's a lot of people leaning towards digital over the years, you still do have a lot of customers that are, still preferring those kind of paper mailers and those traditional forms of communication too. So kind of a mix of different platforms is important to consider too. Couple questions here on self-service, and these are some questions we've added into our surveys over the past couple of years, really since COVID. COVID hit all of us because so many interactions had to take place digitally, and we wanted to really look into what does that experience look like for customers. So we ask about, self-service platform, digital self-service platforms, what tasks are you currently completing online, basically? And a lot of folks are paying their bills online, which makes sense, or looking for product and service information. We also ask a follow-up about, are there anything that you'd like to be able to do online that you can't currently do? A lot of don't know unsures, which is good actually, because it means a lot of people aren't, looking for something to do online and they can't find something. But reporting an outage, a lot of people do want to be able to report an outage online, and then asking general questions. We've seen this pop up a lot in a lot of different surveys where a lot of customers want, I don't know if they want AI necessarily, but they want some kind of a chat option. I kind of feel like a lot of customers would get frustrated with this option and would rather just call, because I personally would get frustrated with it. But that is definitely on there as something people want to be able to do, is just kind of have a lot of their general questions met without specifically talking to a representative. And the importance of these platforms is very high. About 4/5 of customers find it important to have these digital self-service platforms. This is going to be of increasing importance as we continue to ask these questions in surveys years into the future. And really, what this chart on the right is showing is that CMLP is really delivering on, its digital self-service platforms are really delivering on customer expectations in numerous areas. So, delivering and communicating about available programs and services, the ease of understanding the content, really high ratings from customers, no major areas of concern, that customers aren't able to find information or really navigate the website smoothly. Some renewable energy questions. So the first question on the left here is asking if folks know what percentage of CMLP's power supply comes from non-carbon emitting sources. Almost 3/5 said that they think it's somewhere between 70 to 100%. And then the middle question is asking if you feel like the actions that you take at home have an impact on CMLP achieving its net zero greenhouse gas emissions goal. About 7 out of 10 said that they do feel the actions that they take at home are contributing to this, which is great. I mean, it is the majority of customers, so a lot of people do feel motivated to reduce energy consumption at home and really help the utility work towards these goals. A lot of people are still uncertain in this area, so there is, one of our considerations is kind of looking at, how we're educating folks about your greenhouse gas emission goals, and kind of building that sort of community aspect so people feel like they really feel empowered and like that they're part of this initiative as well. It's not just the utility. And similarly on this lens, almost 3/5 that they feel like they are empowered to assist the utility in achieving its goals in this area. Again, a lot of don't know, unsure options here too. We do find that a lot of times utility customers aren't really aware of or familiar of what their utility's goals are, what their utility's doing, anything in this process. So this is an area that we're encouraging a lot of utilities to really bring customers more into that process and make sure that they understand, all the work that you're doing and what their rates are really going towards as far as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and really get the customer base more involved in that process. Trust in the energy portfolio. This is the question on the left is a question we've added recently to meme surveys. And candidly, when we ask this question, it's really asking how much you trust CMLP to make decisions regarding the energy portfolio and how it's created. We usually get a lot more people saying they don't know. So to see this number being almost 9 out of 10 have a great deal or some trust in the utility just shows, again, it's a testament to the overall satisfaction, but it's also a testament to a great sense of trust that a lot of folks in your community have in your decision making, and that you're going to make the right decisions that will have a positive impact on them and future generations when it comes to the energy portfolio. So really positive things to see there, and positive to know that a lot of people, trust you to make these decisions, but they're also aware of and familiar with a lot of the decisions you're making as well. And then we asked customers if they'd be willing to take any actions during coincident peak demand to reduce their energy usage. Over 2/3, 68.3%, did say they'd be willing to reduce or pause their electric usage, which is great. Again, we asked the same survey in we asked the same question in a lot of other surveys, and usually we get a lot of people who are like, no, I don't want to turn off my electric usage. Like I need to be using that. So to see so many customers willing to do this, even for a short period of time, is positive, and it's definitely something to consider for, moving forward. And then lastly is our broadband service. So this was something that was really interesting to us. Usually when we ask about awareness of different programs and services, usually we see awareness being, below 30%. Sometimes it'll be 40%, and that's actually a high number. To see that over 4/5 of your customers are aware you offer broadband, again, it's a testament to your communication. I also know the broadband's been around for a bit, but a lot of people are aware that, you have broadband. But what we found that was interesting is that over half of customers are not currently broadband customers. So I'll bring this up in a couple of slides again, but of those customers who are broadband customers, the satisfaction ratings, as we alluded to earlier, are very high. 9 out of 10 customers are satisfied with the broadband services, and of those, 2/3 are very satisfied. So very positive things for those who are broadband customers, but there are a lot of customers who are aware you offer broadband but aren't currently customers. And so I'm going to get into that actually right now on our considerations page. We think that this kind of offers up some interesting questions for the future to look into, kind of what, if folks are aware you offer broadband but aren't currently a customer, what are their potential barriers? Is it a pricing thing? Is it a, perception of the reliability of the service? Is it, hey, I'm fine with my own internet service right now and I don't want to change? What are the kind of obstacles that customers might have to converting to your broadband? Because we've done a lot of surveys like this before, and a lot of customers tend to be a little bit wary to switch to broadband because their current service is fine, and they don't want to take any risk, especially when it comes to things like internet, which is such an important household thing nowadays, and especially the past couple of years with more folks working from home. So we think that could be a potential, area to explore moving forward. Outage communication I'll bring up again. When it comes to self-service platforms, we saw a lot of folks want to be getting more information when it comes to outages and notifications. And we did see, the ratings for outage communication, even though they're right in line with the national averages, those were actually some of the lower ratings that we saw across the report. So this is an area to kind of look at, what are the outage reporting options that customers currently have, and how can they be made more efficient and easier for customers to use, so customers know what the options that they have available to them if and when there is a power outage, and they're able to, report that outage in a quick and efficient manner. And then net zero goal awareness, as I just talked about a couple slides ago, a lot of people do have, very positive perceptions of the actions that they take at home and how those impact greenhouse gas emission reductions. But there are a lot of people that are still uncertain about, what the goals are, what their involvement looks like, what CMLP's involvement looks like. So this is, again, an opportunity to kind of educate customers more, bring them into the process a little bit more, to kind of build that sense of community involvement in hitting these targets, instead of it just being, an overall utility initiative that customers aren't really involved in. So those are the considerations we had, but I'd love to, at this point, that takes us through everything. So I'd love to open up to any other questions that you all have.
Hey, Catherine, thank you for a very clear and excellent presentation. What questions or comments does anybody on the board have? Brian?
I think this is a great survey and a great summary of where we are. I've seen other surveys in the past, and they seem to say, here's the question we asked, here's the response we got. This seems to have some better comparisons, more. It's a study that I have more. I see more value in than some of the ones we've done in the past. I'm happy to see the level of trust that the community has in Concord Light. I would like to see them be more aware of how decarbonized we are and some of the other things we've done, but it sounds like they generally believe we've done them. So there's not really a criticism. The ability, the number of respondents willing to pause their electricity really shows that Google list with a small financial incentive could be very powerful in managing our peaks and our demand for electricity. Also, the battery program, only 16%, but still people were generally interested in it. Yeah, I think this is amazingly good. So yeah, not much. I do like the highlight that our broadband business is well received but underutilized as an area for us to expand. And I think we need to do a study related to outage communication, similar to this kind of level of rigor, so that we can not so much overhaul, but refine how we communicate an outage. I know we've got the AMI system going in, which those meters, when they stop communicating, is a signal to the Yukon system that there's an outage. That's a new technology that we're going to have. So maybe we can build a platform to link those meters to the text phone numbers so that when a meter goes out, we can text a customer to say, we know your service is out. We're working on a response. We don't have an ETA, but keep that communication with them. Things like that.
Yeah, and to that point, when it comes to outage communication, we did cover this as a key topic last year. I believe it was about a year ago, where we wanted to look at outage communication in more depth. And so we do actually have some survey questions that are surrounding, like, getting more in depth on not just how acceptable you find the communication, but how do you want to be communicated with? What kind of information do you want to receive? So some of those questions may be helpful. And then you can kind of, again, because we have national data on it, you can see, how your customers' data is tracking compared to national benchmarks and things like that too. So we definitely have a couple like areas to explore up our sleeve in that area as well.
Great.
Thank you, John. John, Alice, then Bianca.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. This has really been really well delivered. And as Brian said, I think it's an indication of the great work that the Light Plan employees are doing. A couple questions. One, when you talk about you compare CMLP's results to national averages, over what time period would that be occurring? And
Yes.
would you be able to go back to one of the second or third slide, which is basically the summary of some of the key areas? Yes, this one here.
Yeah.
So if you could answer that question, maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So the national averages are all 2023 averages. So what we essentially do with our public power data source is we field this data across the course of the year. We do 3,000 surveys every quarter. So this is from 12,000 surveys across all of 2023, which means our margin of error, I think, is like 0.5%. It's pretty good. And so we'll be doing another round of that. We're actively doing it right now in 2024, and then we'll have 2024 data to report out on next year. So really it's across the course of the year. And the reason we set it up like that is because we know that, obviously there's different, events that can happen throughout the year that would cause lower ratings or higher ratings, like things like the hot months of summer when you're probably using more energy, or cold months of winter where you're probably using more energy. So that's why we collect it kind of over the course of time. And that's the case for pretty much every, question where you see the little American flag or any national data in there. Some questions, like what I was just talking about with outages, those are what we call a key topics. So we ask about those select quarters of the year. So like last year, we did a survey specific to outage communication, and that one we only had 3,000 completed surveys for, and it was just conducted in Q3 of last year. So it was basically August of last year. So those questions are separate, but really everything that you see in this report was collected across the course of 2023.
And one of the things that just struck me on this chart was the area where we perform the worst comparatively would be with respect to rates. And I'm wondering to what degree that could conceivably be influenced by essentially our power supply portfolio. recognizing that many municipal electric utilities or public power utilities elsewhere have greater access to hydroelectricity. So just any perspective you can share in terms of our score there and what might be driving that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will just say historically speaking, we always see the lowest area is rates, no matter what. And you know, so much of what I've seen over the past couple of years is that there's a lot of public power customers that aren't really aware of, they're aware of what their rates are, but they're not aware of how their rates compare to surrounding areas. So where we see higher ratings means that customers do have this kind of understanding where they're, you know, they know what they're paying, but they also know what the neighboring IOU is charging. And so in Massachusetts, so much of it is like, okay, how much are we paying compared to Eversource or National Grid? We actually, you know, we're based in Connecticut, and so we have like I think 7 public power utilities, and I unfortunately am not a customer of one of them. I'm an Eversource customer, and I only know what my rates are, and so I just think, well, my rates just stink because they're high. But you know, I have a coworker actually who has a public power utility just a couple towns over from me, and she was telling me what her rates are, and I was like, oh my God. And so if she knows by the reverse, she knows what my rates are, all of a sudden her perception of her rates is so much more elevated, because she knows what she could be paying if she just moved to another town nearby. So I think so much of this is like an awareness and education piece. It's not so much that like, oh, well, your rates are just higher than everyone else's, because I don't think that's true. I think so much of it is just kind of like what the perception is and how aware and educated customers are of how your rates stack up compared to others. And I don't obviously love promoting just like, you know, actively crapping on IOUs or anything like that, but it does help to kind of educate customers of how, you know, how their rates could be so much different if they lived in a different town.
Yeah, but John, I wonder if the response to that question is actually based on the rates, not any perception that there have been rate increases in recent years. And also, I think a lot of folks know that our rates are somewhat higher than other MLPs around. Alice.
So thank you, Catherine, for that really good presentation on this data. I'm kind of curious to one of the first slides about how you were able to successfully get 1,000 people to respond to a survey. I think that's pretty remarkable. And I'm wondering if you have any insights about how you were able to do that. Like what were the best communication strategies for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we usually find that it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. So we always say that, you know, the best method to use is sending us your customer email list, and we'll distribute the survey. And we usually will send out, you know, up to 2 surveys or up to 2 reminder emails a week. So it's, you know, hey, your initial one goes out on Tuesday, we send a follow-up on Thursday, same thing the next week. We'll kind of play around with the, you know, days and times of day that we have the best response. So we found that Tuesdays and Thursdays, for whatever reason, are really good days to send out emails. And specifically in the morning versus the afternoon, we tend to have better success. So that's what we usually do. But we also find that, you know, coupling that approach with some direct outreach from the utility really helps as well. So things like, you know, even having a QR code to the survey that's printed in a bill insert, posting the link on social media, on your website, even doing your own email campaigns. So a lot of that is just the multi-pronged approach that we took. You know, it wasn't just one method that worked, it was a lot of different methods that worked. And I will say too, we left the survey open for an extended period of time. We have a lot of clients who say that they want their data immediately. And so we all of a sudden have to field their survey in like 2 weeks. And so then they're yelling at us because their response rate's not what they wanted. I'm like, well, you only gave your customers 2 weeks to take the survey. I don't know what to tell you. And so having, you know, building in more time for the survey and having that full like 5 or 6 week period is really helpful too, because especially when you're doing a survey, I mean, this was, you know, May into June. So you may have some folks who are going on vacation and such. You're giving folks more time to take the survey, and people really appreciate that. I will say too, you know, based on the results of the survey, as you can see, I think a lot of people were eager to take the survey because they have such a positive perception of you. We have a lot of clients that score more in like the 70s and like low 80s range, and we have a harder time getting their customers to take the survey because they have more of a neutral opinion. They don't care as much, so they don't feel as motivated to take it. Conversely, we have a lot of utilities that score really poorly. and their customers feel very motivated to share how much they hate their utilities. So it can go both ways, but I think the positive perceptions did drive a lot of the response rate too.
Well, it's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bianca,
Hi, thanks again for all of this data. I just have a question on the broadband. I found it really well interesting and a little bit concerning that we have 81% of the population of our residents know that about our services, but only 50% of them have the service itself. I know for us, we had some difficulty initially getting the service because of the line not coming to the house. But we couldn't wait. I mean, we were on the waiting list for I think a year, and this was obviously 10 years ago, and my husband had to dig a hole. It was a whole big production. But I mean, we just couldn't get it fast enough. And I'm wondering if it's only 50%, I mean, that seems like a large market that we are missing out on. And is it because they all had similar difficulties getting the line out to the house? What are the obstacles to that?
Yeah.
And do we know whether, because it seems like everybody else was satisfied with the service, those who had it?
Yeah, and you know, we were also very fascinated with this when we, you know, reported out on it, because again, as I mentioned earlier, over 80% awareness of anything is really great. But then when you see that kind of a drop off between awareness and actual usage, that's when you start to look at why is that happening. And so we really feel like that's an area to explore. You know, we've done surveys that are, you know, very extensive, where we're looking at kind of what does the journey look like for someone going through a certain process. And I think some of that, it may be helpful to kind of look at both broadband customers and non-broadband customers and look at, you know, for those who are customers, you know, why did you sign on? What was the process like? Kind of getting some more details on that. But then from those who are non-customers, were there any holdups? Like, what were your barriers? Because, yeah, I didn't even think about the actual sign-on process or what that experience looks like, but it would be interesting to see what kind of drop-off there is, and where in the process people are dropping off. Is it just like people know about it, but they've done research and they're not interested? Or is it that people have actually tried to, you know, enroll in the program, but they've been held up in some way that way? So I definitely think it's an area to look at, you know, in the future to see, you know, what that drop off looks like, because that'll help you all figure out the best way to, you know, communicate with customers and really understand if there's ways to make the process more efficient for customers, or if there's just, if customers are misinformed in some way and they need just better communication too. So I think that'd be helpful in the future.
yeah, I'm going to go to Jason in a second, but Alice, is that an old hand or a new hand?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, old hand.
Okay, sorry, Jason.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a couple things that we know about broadband adoption. The Fiber Broadband Completion Task Force did a great job at studying the barriers and where we were at and finding suggestions and ways that we can address those. If you'll notice in the broadband report in the packet, there's kind of a appendix with the summary of the recommendations that task force had, and we actually continue and follow up on those and meet monthly to discuss where we are on different areas and try to improve them. So I can tell you that there's kind of a combination. First of all, there's a lot of inertia when you have your phone, your internet, your TV, maybe your security cameras and other things all tied up with one company. When you call your carrier and say, I'd like to cancel just my internet, they heavily incentivize you to keep that and maybe even offer it for free for a while so that you can keep all of your other services. And some people have reported that, you know, it just takes work to kind of disentangle that and go cut the cord. So part of it's that. And then, you know, we do provide help with that, but we've looked into seeing how can we provide more help. As Bianca mentioned, there are physical barriers at times where we have areas where power was undergrounded long before broadband existed. And so for broadband to make that last mile to the customer's home, they have to trench, put in conduit, or do other things. And so we recognize that as a barrier too. And I mentioned that last month we were looking at maybe coming up with some subsidy program for customers who are willing to do that, where we might give them free internet service for a period of time. So once we get our financial modeling back, we're going to be looking at what that might do to help speed up adoption. And then there are all sorts of other, you know, differences between us and the big companies that might have advantages if a customer's home is already wired for coax and not, fiber, but also just install time. I mean, we have 3 technicians that can install, and they're doing trouble calls, installations, walkthroughs at any given time. So if the stars are aligned and you're ready for service, we can get your service spun up in a couple days. But most people require fiber to be pulled, and to get that scheduled can take a week, and the walkthrough adds a little bit of time before that. So usually our
Hey,
time to
Jason, we
live.
probably don't want to get too
Yep, sorry.
deep away from the survey into the world of broadband, but thanks for that context. Bianca, did you have something you want to raise?
Oh, it was just a comment when he said it was difficulty getting disconnected from the other competitors. And I would just have to say, we vouch for that. We had to actually tell them we're moving out of the country because they weren't going to follow us like to anywhere else in the country. So we had to just say, no, we're like not going to be here anymore. So yeah, I vouch it was difficult cutting ties.
Hey, Catherine, I have several comments and a question. One is the sample heavily skewed, as you said, to older customers. Did you test as to whether there were any significant differences in the response from older customers and younger customers?
Yeah, we did actually, we always look at the age one because that's where we do see a lot of differences. And usually what we see is older customers give higher ratings than younger customers. I'm going to have to refresh myself and run through those again, but I don't believe there were anything that was significant enough to put in the report. There might be slight differences between them, but usually we only actually include them in there if there's a significant difference. But again, usually we do see that older customers give higher ratings than younger customers. So it would be helpful to kind of look at and by younger customers in this group, I actually mean just under 55 versus 55 plus, because that's where we see a little bit of that delineation happening.
Good. And, we've been spending some time in your comments congratulating CMLP on doing a good job, which is certainly justified. But I think there's also another group that needs to be congratulated here, and that's CMLP's customers, and that it seems like your data suggests that we have a very knowledgeable, engaged customer base compared to elsewhere. But it also suggests to me something where I don't believe what you said about the reliability of the results. And the reason I say that is we learn from this that the customers are very knowledgeable, they're engaged, they're involved, but by definition, the folks who are most likely to be engaged and involved are the ones who are going to respond to a survey. So I'm not convinced that the folks who didn't respond to the survey are going to be the same as the folks who did respond to the survey. So I don't know what you think about that.
No, that's always part of, like, by nature, any survey is self-reporting. So people have to feel there's some sense of motivation to actually go and take the survey. We oftentimes feel like we get less of that when it's an email campaign that sends directly to people versus, seeing a post on social media. People have to feel a lot more motivated to take the survey if they just see a post versus directly receiving one. And so much comes from the language that you're actually using to promote the survey too. So I mean, it's a valid point. With any survey, you're always going to have a little bit of that self-reporting bias, where you're getting people who, felt motivated to actually engage with you in the form of a survey to begin with. And that's just going to happen in any kind of survey. If we were going to just randomly go to people's houses and force them to take the survey, you would probably get different results, because you get people who just feel like they have no choice but to take the survey. Fortunately, that's not part of my job. So usually we just send it out via email and see what happens. So that's always a little bit of a thing that has a little bit of an indication on the reliability, but that's so much of why we have that margin of error. We still do have, it's a smaller one for this study, but we have a little bit of a margin where, if we were going to do the survey again, we wouldn't get the same exact results, but we might see that overall satisfaction could potentially be as low as like a 91.5% or something like that. So it's not going to fluctuate too much, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Brian.
I just I thought about that same kind of the snapshot that was shown, that slide, how it missed out on people. But it would be good to know if people lived in multifamily housing or if they own their home. That's a nice differentiator. We had, only 9.2% of renters respond. And I wonder if um, there's other channels of outreach that could reach more of those people who, are renting at the Muse or, or live in some of the apartment buildings that we have in town that generally don't respond, and also may skew younger as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Again, just like with the age demographics, we like to look at renters versus owners to see if there's differences. And usually you find that a lot of renters are younger. So there's kind of a similar association where renters tend to give lower ratings than homeowners. But this is something I've thought about over the past couple of years because you're definitely not the only utility to struggle to get renters to take the survey. And there's a lot. I mean, we work with, utilities in LA where there's obviously a big renter community and we're still struggling to get renters to actually take the survey. And I've thought about, how can individual apartment buildings and condo complexes be getting involved in the survey through things like, a lot of apartment buildings, you walk through some kind of a lobby to get in and they'll have like a bulletin board with flyers and stuff. Is that something where we can throw like a QR code to the survey on there? I know myself personally, I'm a renter and I live in an apartment building and they put a lot of flyers just on the door to just get into the building. And I read them, even though I don't necessarily want to read them. Like I just kind of have to, it's just right there. And a lot of times it's like, hey, we're painting the building again. I'm like, okay, great. But if you see something about a survey, people might feel motivated that way. It could also help too some of the issue with renters is a lot of times the utilities are paid through the landlord, so it's not necessarily the customers don't necessarily have a direct interaction with the utility. We find that a lot more times when we do water surveys, but that can be the case for electric surveys too. And so that can be a barrier too. But there may be potential ways to engage with some of those apartment buildings as a whole to ask if they can specifically send the survey out because. Again, speaking to my own experience, I get surveys from my apartment building all the time and I take them because I have to. I'm a survey person, but there's, to me, there's no reason why we can't, partner with them and have them help send out the survey as well. And that may actually help response rate too, because if you're living somewhere, you should probably trust the people that are your landlord and that they're not going to send you a bunch of garbage. So those are things that we consider in the future too.
Hey, thanks, Catherine. This was very useful and you did a great job on it. It's been very informative for the board, but we now need to move on. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Jason for the REC calculation method agenda item.
Hi, Ro.
Thank you. All right, so I just want to provide a little background on this. There is, and I know we're a little behind, so I'll try to move quickly. There is a new resolution being offered, part of Order 2023 for ISO New England, which would allow or ask for the GIS system, the Generation Information System that tracks the creation of renewable energy certificates, to move from a monthly calculation to an hourly calculation. So right now they're minted monthly and then traded quarterly. This would allow them to sort of mirror some other markets for RECs that would be hourly. The company that creates and maintains or created and maintains the GIS system is called APX, and they've been managing it since 2001. So this resolution would basically say, APX, we'd like you to use some development hours to change the software system to allow for hourly production of RECs. This came up for a vote before, and Dave Kavanaugh, who's from E&E and is our representative to the NEPOOL, voting member, abstained from a vote previously. In Belmont, there was a discussion about this, and they had asked Dave on their behalf to vote in the affirmative for this. And so this topic came up basically to give the board an opportunity to discuss the impacts of this, and then maybe offer a vote to instruct me to tell Dave on how Concord wishes to vote on this particular amendment to Order 2023.
Any questions or comments on this? Brian?
Jason, I read the memo and it sounds it doesn't sound like the rule is changing. It's changing the capabilities of the system to collect hourly. Is that a correct read?
Yes.
Okay. So it's just adding the function that a rec could be issued for an hour, specific hour, instead of just being over the month.
Right. And I'm happy to touch on the impacts, but I think we'll let the board ask their questions and those might come out.
John,
Yeah, I mean, as someone, who is in the industry, I guess I'd say this is a very complex issue. And I think it's one that we probably should weigh in on. But yeah, I'm very interested, Jason, in any guidance you can provide on anticipated impacts. I saw some discussion of this in the memo, but I felt like that discussion was rather limited and not sure that I 100% believe the characterization of it.
Yeah, so I did talk to Dave in person and then also um, again on the phone and over email about this just to get as much information as possible. There is some nuance to it, right? So on the surface, it's going to cost about $250,000 to make this software change, which is a lot of money. Concord is exempt from paying into the GIS system for the maintenance, so we will not be incurring this, but other ratepayers across the state will be, or across New England will be. But by the same token, instead of a full $250,000, that every year APX gets a bucket of hours to do the programming, and they have a pretty big reserve of hours for this year, and so they've agreed to spread the programming over 2 separate years, and so they anticipate the direct impact of additive cost to be about $75,000. So it's not going to be they anticipate the full $250,000 because a lot of that money is already contracted on an annual basis as kind of like a retainer for maintenance of the software. So there's cost. I think the biggest question mark is the impact on the cost of RECs. Concord buys a lot of RECs, and if the cost of RECs goes up, it's going to impact our ratepayers. There is an anticipation that once RECs are hourly and in line with other markets, that it would allow them to be traded out of the ISO pool and into other markets like New York or other places. So and then, the companies that are advocating for this, the Google, Microsoft, Constellation is the one who actually made the formal request, who's a large clean energy company. Just unclear as to what the motivations are and what they think the impacts are. Constellation was asked for sort of an economic impact report on what they thought was going to happen, and they've not produced one. That was why Dave voted to abstain, is because they wanted to collect more information on the topic. We do think that having the hourly information is going to be very helpful to match true demand with RECs, as opposed to some of the weird situations that we see now where people are claiming that they have green energy, but they're not really backed at the moment that they're using it. So there's definitely good that can come of a system that tracks things hourly. The question is, what will it do to our ratepayers and to Concord's program of buying enough RECs to offset our carbon emitting sources? So unfortunately, we don't know all those details yet. We just can hope that if it does move forward and passes, that the impact is not great to our ratepayers.
I guess if I can just offer a comment, I think an additional perspective as well is maybe broader than just our customers, and to what degree, is this new rec trading framework going to, better enable in terms of delivering on objectives of making sure that the energy that's produced is effectively reducing emissions. And I think that in fact is, one of the intents here, and that there would be some economic efficiencies for this. So, I'll stop with my comments and look forward to further discussion.
Bianca.
So I think part of my question has already been answered by Jason's previous response. And I would just say, I'm very suspicious of this, partially because we sort of already know what time of day the RECs come from. A lot of it is solar. We know that it's solar power. It's going to come during the day. I mean, how much more information we can get in terms of exactly what hour? Does it really matter? It depends more on cloud cover. We know that the wind energy is something that's generally an evening thing. So I'm suspicious, so I would want to know a lot more about why this has come up and who's going to benefit from it, who benefits and who doesn't.
Brian,
So I'm in favor of adding this functionality. If we, on a holistic system, want to have electricity that meets demand at the moment that it's needed and have it be clean, we need to have a way to value that. So I know there are rare but existing situations where wind will produce and push into the ISO system when there is not they're actually creating negative energy prices where they're willing to pay someone to take their electricity so that they can mint this REC to then be able to trade that REC for greater value than they're giving away the energy. This has the potential to start to correctly price the fact that there's no demand for that electricity. They're only doing it to get the REC and to reduce the value of the REC at those moments versus when the wind is needed. That I think is a good market correction because we do want a market that balances supply and demand, and RECs kind of, with the monthly way that they're produced and recorded, leaves an imbalance in that. It's small, but it's correctable by something like this. So I'm in favor of it.
John,
Yeah, and maybe just to respond to Bianca's comments and some of her concerns, one of the requirements of many of the state RPS is that if you are trading with an adjacent jurisdiction, that you have to deliver energy as well as the REC. And the whole idea here is that the intent behind that is making sure that there is an impact on the supply mix and that you are effectively kind of backing down these fossil resources because it's the energy which will in fact do that. And I feel like this provision is really just another aspect of making sure that there is that clear linkage between when the energy is produced and its impact on the system dispatch. So I guess I'm less skeptical. Clearly, there's a self-interest here. I know Constellation, they are traders, and they're looking at an opportunity here to trade. That doesn't scare me. I think that at the end of the day, it's going to, serve people better. But my perspective.
so what I'd like to, we need to put this into context here. We're not the ones making the decision, and it's also not likely that our recommendation of what should be done on this topic is going to be decisive. So this is actually not a big deal decision. And it would be fine for us to not weigh in on it. But if folks think we should go on the record and get our representative to speak on behalf of this. What I would like to do is take a motion to recommend that we instruct Dave to vote for this. If the motion doesn't pass, so be it, because as I said, it's not a big deal. We shouldn't spend a lot of time on it. Would somebody like to make a motion, and then we'll see where people stand?
I can make the Jason had sent an email for the different motions, so I can read from that.
Right.
So I move that the Light Board instruct the interim director to ask our NE Pool representatives to vote in the affirmative for the NE Pool Generation Information System hourly certificates rule changes under the ISO New England Order 2023.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks. And John?
Yes.
Bianca?
No.
Alice,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you. Thanks. Let's move on to the next topic, paperless billing. And I wanted to introduce this topic because this is one where I at least have some strong views on the principles we should be operating on. First of all, I think we should always be taking steps to try to reduce CMLP's cost, take steps to reduce the workload of staff. We should always be taking steps to reduce environmental impact, such as the unnecessary use of paper. On the other hand, we should not, in the case of paperless billing, I don't think we should be forcing people to move away from a paper bill if it's something they want or need. And also, we shouldn't be punitive in making them suffer if they choose that option, but they should incur the real choice if they want to make a choice that causes costs and work for CMLP. That's at least my initial comments on it, but I want to turn it over to Jason.
Great, thank you, Warren. So you'll find a memo in your packet that kind of summarizes the current paper billing situation. And to summarize, we spent $64,000 last year to mail paper bills to customers. I will mention that some customers, like larger rental properties, may receive many paper bills that then are distributed to their customers. So some paper bills actually cost much more to mail than other paper bills. But we've got about 40% of our customers enrolled in paperless billing. And Warren kind of summarized the benefits of going paperless. We do find that people who are enrolled in paperless billing and who have auto pay set up are far less likely to fall into the collections process, which does take a lot of staff time and has impact on operations. So our goal is to try to reduce the number of paper bills that we mail. And that would, as Warren mentioned, save costs and employee time. So the way that other MLPs are handling this, either there's no incentives at all. There's either a one-time payment, or credit for signing up for paperless billing, or a recurring credit for being enrolled in paperless billing. And then other folks have a monthly fee for paper bills. As Warren said, there's not a high appetite for adding a fee for customers to get a paper bill. There's actually 2 states, New York is one of them, that does not allow you to charge for a paper bill for customers. And so I don't think that that's the direction that many people are looking to go. And so we are going to embark on an information campaign to get the word out. I think one of the things we learned from the survey is that people are very engaged and willing to modify their behavior if they understand the impact that it has. So we do think that embarking on an information campaign with bill inserts or social media or other direct mail or email opportunities would inform customers of the options for paperless billing, and having more information when customers first sign up to make sure that that is pushed and people are aware of that option. But we do think that incentivizing this in some way would be a good idea. So we wanted to get some board feedback on that. The other thing I'll mention is that we do mail bills for water and sewer as well. And so if there's a credit that's going to be discussed and decided upon, that we want to make sure that we talk to CPW and the Public Works Commission on that and have them have an opportunity to weigh in so that we have kind of a concerted effort. I'm sure that they share the same goals as we do in getting customers enrolled in paperless billing and auto pay. So I put an example in the packet where a utility in Texas does a $5 credit for people who enroll one time, and then a $5 credit if they do auto pay. There's other examples where people just get a monthly credit. Our goal here is to not eliminate paper bills. As Warren said, there's some people who need them. There's some people that require to pay a check with it and keep it for their records. So we don't have any illusions that we're going to eliminate the service. But if we can better shift the cost to those who are incurring it by offering a credit for those who don't, or by incentivizing people who enroll once, I think starting this late in the game with an incentive is tricky because you don't need to incentivize the 40% of people who've already signed up. And so if we do pass along a credit, when we calculated that, If we say we anticipate to convert 50% of the people who are getting paper bills today, the savings that that would yield is about, $30,000, 32,000, let's say. So if we divide that among all the customers that we anticipate to enroll and make that a monthly credit, it would be a pretty small monthly credit, 25 to 30 cents per month. And that may not be enough to actually incentivize any behavior change. If you get to a one-time, change like what the utility in Texas is doing, you're going to get a higher dollar value, and you're also not going to have to incentivize customers who've already made the behavior change. So those are kind of the two best options, which are pursue a monthly credit that would, take the actual savings anticipated and turn that into something moving forward, or offer a one-time bill credit for folks who enroll in paperless billing and or auto pay.
So let me say one thing from what you were saying about these options. We're not going to be in a position to take a vote on this today. It's more to get a sense of the board as to whether we want to authorize the staff to develop a proposal on this, or whether folks don't want us to go in this direction. So let's take some comments from the board, and I would like to start with Bianca.
Yeah, I was going to make just a couple of suggestions on I think in terms of, since a survey showed that we do have people more interested in engaging and lowering their carbon footprint. I think, maybe just offering, putting an extra flyer out, putting a notice out, or even better, making the paperless billing the default and having people call in if they need a paper bill. I think you're going to get a much bigger change there. And people, if they need a paper bill, they'll still be able to get the paper bill, but then the default is paperless billing. On the paperless billing, I wanted to just, and I'm not a fan of paper, but I unfortunately fall into the category of the person who would probably be wanting to call and ask for a paper bill, only because with our solar production, everything about what we're doing is like our electricity, our power bill has like tripled over the last couple of years, and I can't figure out why, because we're not doing anything different. And so we're going to be, trying to figure out with the solar panel people, like what's going on. And that's very difficult to analyze. So I'm going to have history. And when I go into the Smart Hub, there's very limited history. So if you can offer, if you can extend or just offer unlimited history, or offer or maybe just email the bill in PDF so that you have an electronic copy of the bill, so that the history doesn't go away and we're still able to look at the history, I would happily go into paperless billing. But because of I need to just keep historical records, I'd probably be the person that needed the paper bill. So that was just my comments.
John, Brian, Alice. John.
Yeah, I think, Warren, I very much appreciated the comments that you offered. And I think that a discount, which is, to customers that elect the option of a paperless bill, which is reflective of costs that would be provided on a monthly basis, would be a reasonable proposal from my perspective.
Thank you. Brian.
I just want to echo some of Bianca's comments. I mean, I literally have years of my bills, and I'm an avid environmentalist, but I do know that paper records I can retain and for years and years, and I don't have to rely on someone else to store the data, because it's the historic data that's valuable and why I keep these old bills. So I do want to be fair to those 40% of customers that are saving us an expense by not sending out a bill. But I don't want to create an expectation that we're going to try to convert everyone. I think it should be about, fairly collecting for expenses. If you don't require a bill to be sent, that option's available to you. So the system to provide a paper bill, you should still be paying for, but the actual monthly cost of mailing for $1 and the 50 cents, you should be give some kind of credit for those avoided expenses. I did have a question about that 50 cents. It says monthly cost per utility is 50 cents. Does that mean that water, sewer, electric, and broadband would add to $2, or is it just a 50 cents per month?
I think it was averages, like when you divide it out, just because some envelope mailings are thicker and have more pieces of paper, and so they cost more. So that was just the average monthly cost is around 50 cents, but then some mailings exceed that. Some
Okay,
envelopes,
so it's the number of sheets is really driving the cost. Okay.
right? But not
Um,
necessarily just, I think between water, sewer, broadband, and electricity, that alone does not bump you into another category. It's really having multiple meters or several accounts that bumps you into that.
Oh, all right. So it looks like each account is saving us about $1.50 a month for sending out bills. I don't think that's worth putting on the monthly bill of $1.50 credit for the avoided cost of sending out the bill. So I like the idea of a one-time rebate of your example of $5 for paperless and $10 for auto pay, but there has to be a term or condition that says you get it once for each account. You don't get it multiple times. So if you go back to paper, then go back to, so
Yes.
forth, you can't game the system. Also, a requirement that the duration that you're paperless, when you receive that credit, you're saying, I'm going to go paperless for a full year at least before I change my mind and go to paper again. Those
Thank
are
you, Brian. Let's go to Alice.
Thank you. I'm somewhat swayed by Catherine's presentation about the favorability ratings that Concord has from how we operate the utility, and that there is a very good understanding that we are a public entity. We are not the same as an IOU. And so I think paperless billing is, of course, what we should be doing. And I don't think it needs incentives to be paid to individuals. That the incentive that people get is the common good, that their $1.50 is a common pool, and that everyone's rates may be affected by it, and everyone's cost of the operations of the light plant is a community value. And that's enough to incentivize folks to choose paperless billing. So I think it's a no-brainer to offer it, and I don't think we need to offer incentives for it. We can thank you for your contribution to the overall community service that we provide. That's my sense.
Well, I want Jason and the staff to take back these comments and see what we should do. I'm not sure, Alice, I fully agree with you on that, because I do think although people are public spirited, there is significant evidence that people are also motivated by even small cash incentives to take action. But let's see if, you could take these comments, Jason, and bring this up at a future meeting.
Sounds good.
We're going to defer the Aegis discussion to a future meeting, and we're going to switch now to public and liaison comments. I think Cameron has left from the select board. So let's go to public comments. Pamela Drett.
Hi, Pamela, 13 Concord Green. I want to point out that my bank incentivized me to switch to paperless by instituting a fee to continue with paper, a small fee. And that works just as well as paying. And it's a fairer distribution of costs because the paper cost is from the fee, and that makes it obvious to everyone. So I think it's fairer to put a fee on those that need to and want to continue with paper, because there's also the possibility of printing out your own from your digital copies. Also, that's why we instituted as a town a 5-cent paper bag fee for markets, because we're all paying the same thing. It doesn't change what we pay, but it makes it visible what the costs are. And those people that incur them pay the costs, and those people that do good things by going digital don't have to pay the cost.
Thank you, Pamela. Let me turn to Colin Reed from the FinCom. I'm sorry, Colin, I didn't see you on the list of attendees, or I would have asked you to, if you had any comments. Colin.
Oh, that's fine. I was just coming up with an idea. Question about the grant regarding the heat pumps for the Everett Gardens. That was with Cambridge Housing Authority, not the Concord Housing Authority. Am I right about that? You said Cambridge, right, Jason?
That's what Jan had passed along, but I can confirm and get back to you on that, Carlin.
Okay, I was just curious because I was wondering why Cambridge got the grant, but we got the heat pumps. That's all. Thanks.
Any other public comments? With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
A second.
Second.
Alice,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we will be back in September. And as folks have heard from the town manager, we're likely to have an extra meeting in September to have an opportunity to interview candidates for the permanent director position. So thanks. Bye now.
Thank you.